Hi, and welcome to Let's Talk Energy Healing with me, Jacqueline Rose. And today our guest is Steve Gooch, all the way from Rugby in the UK. Steve is a stress and burnout management expert, a creative and mindfulness coach. Welcome, Steve. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, Jacqueline. It's lovely to be here.
Can you actually if we actually touch on burnout, many of us see things on social media, the TV, magazines, wherever we go. We should all know where we're heading. We should all have goals. We should all have plans. But shouldn't we sort of take a moment to be living in the moment, be living in today? Do you think that do you think that could actually, living our lives at a 24/7 causes us to burn out? Do you think?
Well, living our lives 24/7 certainly does. I mean, I think, we all have to make plans and set goals for ourselves. We have to all, do our best to explore our potential and capitalize on the gifts and skills and talents that we've got as much as we should. But it's really about getting all of that in balance and realizing that, sometimes it's okay just to flake out on the sofa and watch TV and relax and not be constantly striving and pushing forward. I mean, it is about getting that balance and taking time out just to relax and chill out and do nothing really. And, one of my favorite sayings at the moment is do less to achieve more. And I think that's really what it's about. Sometimes we do have to slow down, take our time, because when we do that and get ourselves into balance and rest, then we actually achieve more and we can achieve our goals much more quickly and in a better way, I think.
Do you think perhaps having a walk out in nature can sort of quieten our minds, can sort of feel the energy of nature? Do you think that could sort of help in any way?
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's lots of ways of doing this, and certainly, getting out in nature is a fantastic way of just relaxing and getting in touch with the world around us and really soaking up that feeling of relaxation and contentment and centeredness. One of the things that I'm sure many of your listeners will be aware of is the color green having a very strong resonance with the heart center. Well, what better way than to actually settle into that space and stillness that is represented by the heart center than getting out in nature and surrounding yourself with greenery.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes, like we've just mentioned, that, we're all living these busy lives. Sometimes it's actually nice. And I think the time goes so quickly in a year that it's nice just to actually notice the seasons, notice those changes.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. And I think, one of the lessons that we can learn from that ever-changing process of the seasons giving way to the next season as an ongoing, constant state of flow in the seasons is that nothing lasts forever. Everything is in the process of change, and we can't grasp onto anything. We can't anchor ourselves and hang on to anything at all. We have to get into that flow because that's the nature of the universe. It's all flow. It's all about change and progression.
So do you think then by sort of us putting these plans or goals, whatever you want to call them, into place, we need sort of a direction to be heading in. But do you think once we've actually achieved that goal, then it's like, I've got to get on to the next one and the next one and the next one? Do we need some sort of space and time in between each one to celebrate that we've actually reached that goal?
Yeah, I mean, we should always be willing to stop and celebrate, whatever successes and achievements that come along in our lives. But I think the whole concept of setting goals and then heading for them we need to bring some focus and awareness to this, because it's really not about the achieving of the goal. It's about the process of getting to that goal. And we can't, if we go back to this idea of, watching the seasons go by, I mean, we don't we don't have as an intention to aim for experiencing the summer. And then there is that goal. There is the summer fixed in our awareness. Of course, that's not the case. The summer is an ever evolving, changing concept. And we get into the flow of that movement of the seasons. And we need, in the same way, we need to get into the ever changing flow of our own achievements, our own goals, our own strivings, our own efforts. And that goal just becomes a marking point on a continuous journey. So we get to a certain point, and then maybe now we want to continue that journey and achieve something else. But it really is all about the journey.
Yeah, totally agree there. Do you think that sometimes maybe we feel we're not actually getting or reaching our goal? I know people actually say about taking baby steps, but do you actually think sometimes, we might deviate off the actual route? Nothing is a straight line, is it, in life?
Yeah, absolutely. We can end up going in all sorts of different directions, and that's okay. I mean, it's life is a constant flow of experiences and lessons, and it's really quite important, I think, to be open to the possibility that our original goal may not actually serve us in the end. And we need to be open to the idea that maybe a better goal might present itself, or a different direction might come up that is more suited to our needs. So I think being open to the possibility of going in a different direction is really quite critical. Otherwise we can get so rigid in our pursuit of a particular goal that perhaps we end up missing something that is even better, or that serves us and others more than our original goal. I think we need to be quite flexible in this.
Yeah, and of course, often along our journey, we can meet different people, can't we? We come in touch, or different people come into our lives that have these fabulous ideas and creative ideas that maybe we can join in with them, and they can sort of help us on our journey as well, and take other inspirations from them to create something bigger and better than we ever thought would be possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's true. If I look back at my life, I mean, apart from, my two kids, Marianne and Sam, being huge inspiration to me. I mean, there's my Reiki teachers who taught me Reiki 25 years ago, Gordon and Dorothy Bell. They influenced my life profoundly. And, I'm forever grateful for the gift of the teachings that I received from them. In fact, my second book, which came out about 3 or 4 weeks ago now, was dedicated to my Reiki teachers. So they were a massive influence on me. I trained as a sculptor, so I'm an artist as well. So, I owe a great debt to, my tutors from university that really helped me on that journey. And, art has always been a massive part of my life.
Beautiful. With regards to energy healing, is it mainly Reiki that you actually, you teach, or do you have workshops for them?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I teach mainly Reiki, but I teach it from a very specific tradition called Reiki Jinkei-do. Now, that's important because Reiki Jinkei-do is the only tradition in the world that contains within it the original esoteric Buddhist teachings that modern secular Reiki developed from. So alongside the modern secular Reiki that I teach, I also teach the ancient original esoteric Buddhist method that led to modern Reiki. So in a sense, you could say there's modern Reiki and old Reiki sitting side by side. So I teach both of these practices.
So do you actually perform Reiki on your clients, or?
Yeah, occasionally I do. I mean, I'm we all have our different skills, qualities, preferences in life. And certainly for me, I love teaching. I mean, teaching Reiki is the thing that does it for me. I mean, that just lights me up. Giving treatments, yeah, I don't mind doing this. And I'd actually do quite a lot of Reiki treatments. I think I've done about 10 in the last week, but it's not the thing that lights me up. I'm quite happy to, when I get people requesting treatments from me, I'm quite happy to pass them on to my own students and, give them some work. But I do quite a lot of treatments myself.
Okay, beautiful. Do you actually just teach Reiki, or do you teach any other energy healing?
No, I just teach the Reiki and the Buddho method. Buddho is the original Buddhist method that Reiki developed from. So I teach Buddho and Reiki. That's it. And then mindfulness meditation as well.
Yeah, of course. If we actually have just a quick thought on, do people actually sort of come to you and sort of say, I feel stuck, I have this great goal, I want to achieve it, I feel I'm taking baby steps towards it, but I'm just feeling I'm stuck, I don't know which way to go. I'm just touching on the creative part here, without you giving too much away. I'm just sort of thinking, how does somebody become stuck in the first place, and then how do they actually unstuck themselves, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, this happens a lot, and as a writer and an artist, I fully understand and appreciate that process of just getting stuck and not knowing where to go and what to do. And, you've got all these ideas in your head and you just don't know what to do to bring them into realization. And that usually is as a consequence of, it can be several things, but it's usually an emotional problem. It could be stress related or depression or anxiety. It's often feelings of inferiority when you compare yourself to somebody else. I'll never be as good as that artist or that writer. Or it can be imposter syndrome, where you get in the back of your mind, you're thinking, somebody's going to figure out that I'm not as good as I'm pretending to be, that sort of thing. And all of these things can get you stuck. And the solution to that is, there's many solutions, but one of the solutions, a really good one, is to actually start developing awareness of your own emotional state. And a classic way of doing that is through meditation, using mindfulness.
Right. Okay. Yes. Because as I say, often, I suppose it would be the same for, like you say, for different artists, even for a writer, you look at this blank page and you've got all these ideas and think, well, where on earth is it going to start, or.
Yeah.
So then I suppose that comes back to sort of planning, how your story is going to evolve, or like myself, I paint. You have, you scrib the colours on, and then you think this. Do you think you need to be in a certain space, that sort of freedom space?
No, I don't think so. I think that's a myth that all artists are taught as early on in their careers, but I don't think that's true at all. I mean, you get to the point where actually you should be able to sit and create in any circumstances, really. That idea of the writer being blocked, and they may have an idea or a story or a concept in their head and they just don't know what to do with that blank page. Well, the thing to do is just start writing stream of consciousness, and I guarantee the first 2 or 3 paragraphs will be absolute junk and you'll be throwing it in the bin. But once you get past that, you will start to write some meaningful text that maybe you'll want to use or keep and edit into a polished form later on. It's just about getting started. You just start and to begin with, it might be rubbish, but you keep going and then you start producing quality.
Well, thank you for sharing those tips. I'm sure many of our listeners will find that really, really interesting and also inspirational. That, like you say, just have a go. Just get started.
Get started. Yeah.
Just get started and just take those baby steps. Can you tell us a little bit about your book? I know you mentioned that your last book was actually dedicated to your Reiki teachers. Are they still with us? Are they still teaching?
Yes, sadly. I mean, I was taught by a married couple, Gordon and Dorothy Bell, and sadly, Dorothy passed away about 6 or 7 months ago. It was at the beginning of the year, end of last year, beginning of this year. Dorothy passed away. So I was very sad to see her go, because she'd just a giant in my spiritual journey, really, which is why I dedicated the book to her and her husband. Her husband, Gordon, he's still here. He's not teaching anymore, as far as I know. I mean, he spent probably the last 10 years or so just looking after his wife, Dorothy. So it's been some time since he actually taught any classes. Okay. So yeah, I mean, my book, is actually called Mindfulness Meditation and the Art of Reiki. The reason that I wrote that was because most people have this concept of Reiki as being just this very simple energy healing practice. And I have to admit it is a fantastic energy healing practice, but that's, in some senses, that's the least of the system of Reiki. Reiki is really a very deep personal spiritual development practice that sits on the foundation of a good solid mindfulness meditation practice. I mean, in a sense, I think it's really hard to call yourself a Reiki practitioner unless you're actually meditating as well. It's not just about the energy healing. There's a significant part of this is about meditation. So my book is about really addressing the imbalance in the Reiki literature, which has for many years predominantly focused on the energy healing aspect, and that's fine, but the balance needed to be addressed. And so I wanted to write a little bit about the meditation aspect, the mindfulness aspect to the Reiki system in this book, and talking about where that meditation focus in Reiki combined with the energy work can potentially take you. So it's it's a book that's really very much focused on your own personal spiritual journey. And there's very little in it about energy healing, to be honest. So that's really the focus of my book. And also mindfulness is, a significant part of my own life. I mean, I've been practicing mindfulness for many years and teaching it for many years. I always teach mindfulness in my Reiki classes, but mindfulness is a huge practice that has changed my life in so many ways. And I think it is such an extraordinarily powerful practice to help you find peace and serenity and centeredness and stillness in your own life. And, any of your listeners that are interested in practicing mindfulness or having a look at what I do in terms of that mindfulness practice, there is a page on my website where I've got, I think it's 8 or 9 recorded guided meditations, which are the meditations that I use in my book. They're all there for anyone to access free on my website. So, your listeners are quite welcome to go to that page, and there's plenty of meditations that they can try out if they've never done any mindfulness before.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Steve, for that. I'm sure there'll be many that will be visiting your website for that. As I say, often there again with mindfulness and meditation, if you haven't done it before, it's how do you start it? Where do you start it? I know there's oodles of information out there on Google and different places, but it's actually connecting with somebody. Do you think it's important to actually connect with an energy healer, to sort of gain that trust and belief in somebody's ways of meditating, of that mindfulness, to sort of trust in what they're saying is true and right?
Yeah, I think so. I think, I often say to my students, look, whenever you're Googling anything, come at this with a little bit of skepticism, because you can't trust everything that's on the internet, and really connect with a teacher, talk to them, find out what they know about this subject. One of the things that I'm very focused in on when I'm talking to people about meditation within the context of energy healing is that so many workshop facilitators and spiritual teachers, when it comes to doing meditation, will, without a thought, put on some nice, relaxing, new age music in the background. Well, no one does this. I mean, if you go and watch monks in a monastery or in a temple meditating, they're not sat there with their headphones on listening to some nice, relaxing music to meditate to.
No, absolutely not.
That's one of the things that I would emphasize. If someone's teaching you meditation with music, this is someone who doesn't understand the practice of meditation fully. So I would say go and find somebody that's not playing music in the background. So, and this, I think you have to spend some time researching this. Get yourself a good teacher that understands the practice of meditation properly.
Yeah. And I think like with these podcasts, where people can actually listen to you, they can get a feeling about you, how you talk, your advice that you give, and again, you sort of build that rapport with somebody or that connection with somebody. I think, yeah, this guy sounds okay. I'll have a listen to his meditation. And like you said, you don't need all that music. If you need to meditate, go out into nature, and nature has her own music, to play to you, to relax you, to calm you down and get into that meditative state.
Oh, absolutely. As I say to my students, if you go out into nature, you don't have to be in nature. You can be walking around a city. And if you're being mindful of all of the sounds around you, it's absolutely astonishing, that soundscape. I mean, you start to realize that the world is playing a symphony to you all of the time. And yet you're largely completely unaware of that until you actually bring that mindful awareness to that soundscape. And it's quite an astonishing practice, actually.
Yeah. And I think as well, that brings into our lives, gratitude, being grateful that we've got these beautiful gifts that we open every morning, our eyes, and that we can actually hear all these beautiful sounds. But often we're in such a rush that we don't actually take that space, that time to listen to the sounds around us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, we do need to slow down and build some gratitude time into our lives, and I mean, what's really interesting these days is that there is starting to be really quite a big focus on gratitude from a scientific perspective. And there is a lot of research evidence now building around the benefits from a neurological standpoint from a simple gratitude practice, something like keeping a gratitude journal, or just as an ongoing practice throughout the day, just being focused in on that process of being grateful for just being alive, for your breath, for nature, for the breeze, the clouds, the birds, everything around you,
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I do think that although the pandemic was absolutely devastating, to an awful lot of people, and it affected all of our lives worldwide, I do think that it did actually make us sort of stop for a minute, didn't it? And sort of question lots of different things, i.e., am I in the right place? Work-wise, am I happy? And also that gratitude thing, just stopping, and I'm out in the country, I've got a garden, a lot of people are in a flat, or they haven't got that garden that they can go out into, just the simple things of life.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's those things that we need to be so grateful for. That when we get back to nature, it's actually, the world is an amazing place, and we really do need to spend a bit of time just being grateful for that, and just acknowledging what we've got, the benefits and, the positive things that we've got all around us all of the time, and taking time out from that endless pushing forward to achieve goals, and just stop and just breathe and appreciate what is there all around us.
Absolutely. I totally agree on that. So just to sort of finish up, is there anybody that you'd like to say hello to today?
Well, I'd love to say hello to my daughter and my son, Marianne and Sam, who are just such incredible inspirations in my life, always have been. I love them to bits. And to my teachers, Gordon and Dorothy. And, I know Dorothy, as I said, Dorothy's not with us anymore, but, the debt of gratitude that I owe to her and her husband is immense. So I'll just give a shout out to both of them as well.
That's beautiful. I'm sure wherever the Dorothy is, she'll be looking down saying, thank you, Steve, for that.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure she will do. Well, it's been beautiful talking to you today. Thank you ever so much for your meditation on the website. I'm sure some of our listeners will be over there as soon as they can be. And thank you for chatting to me about more different types of energy healing. Thank you.
My pleasure. It was lovely to be here.